Hi, friends and family. Welcome back to the Purple Couch Podcast. Today, we're going to continue reading some of the questions that have come in from some of our viewers across the country. We're really going to focus today on iPads and screen time. So, if you want to know how to control that iPad at home, come on back, get your head filled with some amazing information from my amazing team. We look forward to seeing you here on the Purple Couch Podcast. Hi, friends and family. So today we're going to get right back into the Q&As from all of the families across the country that have sent us in some questions and need their assistance and guidance from our team. Don't you think that's kind of where we're at today? Yeah, absolutely. We got such amazing feedback from the Q&A session that we did last time that we've got some more questions that we didn't get to that we wanted to make sure those families knew we did hear them. So today, our first question is, all they want to do is the iPad or other electronics. Nothing else works. How do I find other things to motivate them? So my first thing that we're going to go in is I need to let our parents know our children need to learn how to be bored. Mm-hmm. We are in a world of immediate gratification. Instant gratification. If the clicker doesn't work, my goodness, I remember when there were no remote controls, my sister and I were the remote control, and I think that was still when we had 5, 7, and 9 on the television. It wasn't, cable hadn't really come out yet.
Little dial button.
Exactly. Yes. But
they don't exist anymore.
They don't. Our kids don't understand the pain or the telephone cord,
Yeah.
Oh, we didn't have cell phones. The privacy was the cord underneath the door, shut the door, and then shh, I'm on the phone. So, how do we combat the world of electronics and technology and our children?
Oh.
I think we have to go deep diving on this because
there's a lot of different routes to go.
We need to first look at who put the electronics in their hand.
Yeah.
We have piggybacked on a couple questions here because we not only have gotten the question to how do we get into our kids' lives outside of the electronics, but also how much screen time is safe and what do we do when they have a temper tantrum when we take the electronics away. So we're going to try to touch base on a lot of these topics, all revolving around the addiction to electronics, because I truly think that's what we need to call it.
And it does start at a young age nowadays, right? I mean, Missy and I have young kids, and some of their toys are electronics, and they have screens, and their screens talk to them like Siri talks to us, or Alexa, or whoever, school of choice. But it's starting at such a young age. And, we talk about applied behavior analysis, and one of the things that this question revolves around is understanding what your child's reinforcers are. We can get into the work of preference assessments and learning what our kids really prefer or don't prefer. But when you get stuck in that realm of like these questions come from, all my kid prefers is electronics, what do we tell parents to do? Well, hang on, let's take a step back, right? Let's take a step back to how often are you allowing the electronics to be available to them? Is it readily accessible to them? Or do they have to earn it? There's, those kind of dynamics. And then are you mixing and matching variety of things that your child likes so that they know it's not all about just the iPad?
Absolutely.
So we have kids that love the iPads, love the YouTube videos, those kind of things, all different ages. They also like to play outside, read books, maybe paint and color and things like that. But the electronics are readily accessible. They don't really have to work for it. They can grab it at their leisure,
Absolutely.
And so of course they gravitate towards those things because it's fun, it's exciting, it's entertaining, it's those kind of things. And we have kids in our schools and our clinics that love sound.
Yes.
And really that's a big reinforcer is those sounds and those the lights and everything. So you don't get that from a book. You don't get that from reading a book. You get that from that sensory of those electronics.
You're being so nice.
At least that's what I see anyway.
He's being so wonderful in the world of clinical behavior.
Oh, for sure.
I'm not. I cannot stand it when I go to a restaurant and I see a 2-year-old sitting at the table with an iPad. I can't. It really, I'm telling you, it's a pet peeve of mine because I sit back and I start watching the family then. And then I see mom, and she's got her iPad or her phone.
Or their phone.
Dad has the phone.
Yeah.
You know, both of them have the phone up. And then there's little Junior, and he's got the iPad, and he's in his happy world, you know. But what happens when the food is delivered? You go to take the iPad away, and it's the death grip.
Yeah.
No, don't do that. Yeah.
And then you know what comes next. You know, and we hear it. Yes.
Watching.
Absolutely. And the parents are oblivious to it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And then wonder, why is this happening?
Well, and it's a twofold problem because parents, we cannot use this as a babysitter
Right.
and then expect to be the opposite when it's not convenient for you. When you want Junior to be paying attention to you, but he's still focused on the iPad, well, you have to condition that child.
Yeah.
Right now, what you've conditioned them to do is be quiet by giving them the iPad, or when they have an iPad in their hands, then they're not using their hands.
Yeah.
And so we've got to, as parents, recognize that within ourselves first. Before we can make any change to the child, we really need to start looking at what boundaries are we putting on.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's a true reflection. And boundaries, guys, boundaries are not what you instill in your children. And I think that sometimes is misinterpreted. Boundaries are for you.
Right.
So if I'm stating that I do not want any electronics at the dinner table, then for me, I do not have them at the dinner table.
Right.
I'm putting that boundary around my table. That's not me telling Manny that he can't have his iPad or his iPhone. It's telling him that when you're with me at the table, there will not be any electronics.
Yeah.
And so consistency has to be key as well. We see it all the time. We see parents that come in and say, oh my goodness, well, Sally, she won't do anything without her iPad.
Oh, yeah.
Then we go and we pull up the cameras and we can show mom and dad that Sally doesn't have the iPad at all at school because we don't permit it, because it has to be a reward for us. And then a lot of parents are shocked. A lot of parents have seen that in the home, the child goes into tantrum as soon as you go to take that reinforcement away. And I don't want to say it's a reinforcement, because at that point, it's a comfort item.
Yeah.
It hasn't been used as a reinforcement because it's been so readily available.
Right.
You know, so we have to look at things as, okay, well, what do they want more than the iPad in order to break that addiction?
Right.
You know, and sometimes it is okay, especially with our older kids, to tell them it's all right to be bored. Hey, I do it with Loki all the time. You know, he'll come in and it's like, oh, Mom, my iPad doesn't have any battery. And I'm like, oh, so bad. Life's going to end, you know, and
What else can you do? Yeah.
exactly. And those options, to hear him come up, well, I guess I could go paint. I guess you could. But it's like you said, how readily available is that? Well, you have to get the paints out. You got to get the brushes out. You got to get the canvas out. Then you're going to have to clean up afterwards. And our kids are brilliant. Do not underestimate your children. They already know, well, if I do that, then I'm going to have to do this and I'm going to have to do this. But let them know that it's okay. And don't give them any other options sometimes.
But I think you're keen in on something too, that we do it as parents, and we see it with parents, is sometimes those electronics are used for the parents, not necessarily for the kids. Like, I need time to cook, I need time to clean, I need time to take this phone call. Here you go, Johnny, have the iPad and you're going to be quiet for a good 30 minutes. I mean, that's a sense of relief for all parents, right?
Absolutely.
We all face it, right? We all do it. But I agree with your points. Like, for me, it's not the dinner table. It's when we sit down on the couch as family time. No electronics, no phone. Well, if I see my wife or one of my kids with their phone, it's like, you're breaking our family rule, right? So 0 electronics during that time. And it's precious time, right? It's not a big deal of time, but it's precious time. And we got to set those ground rules as parents.
So I'm going to play devil's advocate here. So how would you advise our other parents in those same situations? You've designated family time. You've set the boundary that there are not to be electronics during that time. But your wife comes in and she's like, oh, man.
Yeah.
And guys, I've seen it. I've seen the parents that are like, okay, it's no electronics. But yet every now and then the phone that's in the pocket, we get a side look or a glance, or, oh, I just got to check it vibrated. You know, that again is showing our compulsion that that cell phone is in control.
Yeah.
So what advice would you give to
Well,
our families?
Not just advice, is what I do.
Love it.
So I do a couple of things. One is I like to teach the kids in particular that if something were to come up, own it, right? My phone just went off. Oh, it's so and so. May I and excuse myself, okay, for a few minutes, right? Because it happens. What if my wife got a phone call from her mother or something? We're not trying to detach from the world,
Right.
but it's just kind of as a common courtesy. Similarly to if you're working in a job and you're talking in a meeting and you get an emergency phone call or something like that, right? Stuff happens. So just own it. Own that responsibility, whether it's a kid or an adult. And so we model that. So, but the second thing is if it's not that, if it's your social media feed that pops up in your radar and you get distracted, I'm that guy. I pause whatever we're watching as a family and I make everybody just sit there and wait. So now we're waiting for you. How long are you going to be? And nobody likes that because now you got social pressure. Whether it's a
Absolutely.
kid or my wife. And she goes, whoops, and then you own the whoops.
Oh, I love that.
So, but it's an immediate consequence, but it's also about just kind of helping everybody understand, like we only get so much time. In my family, we probably only get about an hour together. That's outside of homework, outside of cooking, outside of picking up after the babies and all that. We get maybe an hour every night, right? And that's Monday through Friday because of school and work and everything. And weekends are different, but that 1 hour, I want to protect it as much as possible.
Absolutely.
So for me, I am that guy. I pause whatever we're
I love
watching
that.
and I just wait it out, even if it's a couple of minutes. Like, go ahead, get it out. And so, like, my 15-year-old gets a text. She sees the screen from a friend. Pause. Sorry. And then, right?
But he's shaping that behavior by putting it on pause. So that awkward where everyone's like, oh, it's you, as a family, it is still putting up his boundary that I'm not going to continue to watch this movie because watching this movie is my family time with my family. So it also shows that each one of them are being held accountable and that we're human, that things are going to happen. Mistakes are going to happen. Oh, sorry, Dad. I don't mean to interfere with family time. Let me go put it down on the counter in the kitchen. Things along those lines. But it's doing that as a family. And that's using your words and speaking it as a family and not more of an authority. We are doing it this way and this is how it's going to go. And if you do anything outside of these boundaries, okay, well, if you have some really bright children in your house, they're going to call you out on that. They'll be the ones that'll start at the dinner table going, okay, well, Mom, where are you putting your cell phone? How much screen time did you have today? And I think that's a really hard reflection is that we have to remember as adults to hold ourselves to the same accountability.
Yeah. I put my cell phone on do not disturb for that time.
Oh, I love it.
That way there are no distractions. Yeah, I could get an emergency and I have an emergency family list that they can interrupt the do not disturb. And so we have that technology to our advantage these days. Where in the past, it was the land phone and it rings no matter what. You can't put that thing on mute. But now you can put yourself on mute for a little bit of time and it's not a lot of time. I think it's different though with younger kids. Because in younger kids, they can't, they're still learning.
Yeah.
So how does that work in your house? How do you work it with the Peppa Pig and everything that's going on with because you've got a 2-year-old now.
Yeah. So currently she's only allowed to watch Cocomelon.
Okay.
So we try to limit what she has access to with that. And we try to give her opportunity to do different things. Something we actually recently did. So she had this little art table that we had in one of the back rooms that, if we go into the room, she'll play with it. But we don't go into that room too often so she doesn't play with those toys. Actually, my husband, this was his idea, not mine. I'll give him full credit on it. Just one night, he picked it up and brought it into the living room that we spend the most time in. She's been playing with that and drawing and the stickers so much more than she has done. And I mean, I should have known that clearly. But just like having it available and just an option in the room that you spend the most time in.
Absolutely.
Those little things cue into like, oh, it's pink. That's my favorite color. Let me go and see it. I like to draw. And then we have a little like easel whiteboard thing right next to it. So she's been playing with that a lot. Had nice discussions about we use markers on the whiteboard, not on the floor. This is how we clean up now.
Well, and that's the imaginative play that you're able to take and emulate in that experience. Readily available. Those are some of the keys that I'm hearing from this conversation is parents, We have to, number one, make sure we're not using it as a babysitting service,
Mhm.
that we are not building the addiction and then being the reinforcement to come in and say, well, I don't want you to use it now. It's not convenient for me for you to be on your cell phone or your iPad now. Well, that has to be universally as a household rule.
Right.
So setting some ground rules as a household will be key. Then making sure there's other options readily available for the child. It doesn't have to cost money, guys. Egg cartons make some of the best toys. You know,
Boxes.
how about
Yep.
straws?
Yeah.
How many of you all played, the game with the straw? How fast you can get the ball or the little puff, and doing races. Exactly. Yeah, even then, but we have to go back to core concepts because that's also at the time of development that's building fine motor skills, gross motor skills instead of immediate interaction.
Yeah.
What does that build? We're in a society right now where the prevalence of ADD, ADHD, those things along those diagnosing alphabet soups. Well, especially for our boys, I cannot hone in on this enough. Between 2 and 6 years old, there is so much testosterone that is in the male body that they're trying to process. They cannot just sit. This is where we have so many little boys that are being diagnosed Ritalin and medication for ADHD and ADD, when really what they need is physical exercise. They need to get on the floor. They need to roughhouse. They need to understand their body in space and time.
Yeah.
And they can only do that by having physical activity, doing things that involve sensory activities. They're not getting that when it is nothing but electronics.
Yeah.
So screen time. We have a mom that did send in, how much screen time is too much screen time?
Yeah, I think there's even some good medical journal research on this, like in terms of like the prevalence of screen time to attention deficits and things like that. I can't remember what the actual numbers are, but I remember one pediatrician used to say like 30 minutes or less, something like that. I look at it a little bit different. I look at it in terms of like, what is it that they're watching? So like if it's educational, if it's the alphabet or numbers and things like that, kids go to school for 7-8 hours and they're getting academic work all that time.
Correct.
Imagine if that was on a screen, would we say it's too much? So I kind of look at, depending on what they're now, if it's a YouTube video of Peppa Pig or a YouTube video of, some of the kids
like Minecraft
or the dance, the stuff.
Correct.
Then 30 minutes or less. I even say 10 minutes or less, just get a dose of it. But
so what do we do if we have a situation that we have a child that mom and dad are listening to this podcast and they go, oh my gosh, my kid spends 5 hours a day just on video games. And that's real.
That's real.
Look, guys,
video games for sure.
That's really, let's call it, and we are all sinners up here, guys. We are all guilty of it, okay? The only reason that we can share this information is because we've walked the walk.
Oh, yeah.
I had to sit down with my son's psychologist and ask him, I was like, okay, the screen time is excessive because after school, the pressure of being in the academic setting, when my son would get home, that was the way he vented. All of his friends are also there. That's something else we're combating right now, is that in the world of Discord and online gaming, a lot after COVID of our relationships were built in an online format, and that was society-wise. Globally, did we, after the pandemic, go into our shells and we started communicating more on the electronic realm? How do we break that into a child where it's not going through withdrawal? Because that is what the symptoms are like. When you take an iPad or a video game system that the child has spent 3 to 5 hours a day on, how then do you change that pattern of behavior?
Yeah, I'll take a stab at this one because I'll put a disclaimer though. I think I'm blessed a little bit because I'm going to use my 9-year-old son. That's my best example. So we're split home, right? So he goes to his mom's house, my ex-wife's house, every week, twice a month. We alternate every other week. And about a year ago, he definitely was that kid. Nights, weekends, daytime, nighttime, didn't matter. after he was done with whatever he had to do, homework or whatever, he was on a video game. And we started recognizing that in my house with my wife last year. Instead, that we gotta change this, right? Because he's way too much into it, and he didn't want to do anything else, right? He didn't want to play outside or anything else. So we had to shape it, because we knew that if we just immediately took everything away, one, he'd probably not be very happy in my house. And then two, it wasn't necessarily encouraged to do less at the other house. And from his words, as well as his sister's words, and my ex-wife said too. So we started shaping the behavior. So we started doing a schedule. We started to say, okay, let's track. And so we're data nerds at my house. So we started tracking how long he was playing video games. And we were averaging about 3 to 4 hours.
Can I stop you right there? That is a key point I wanted to do, because we take it for granted, because in the ABA field, everything is data. Everything is looking at what the baseline was, because perception versus reality is sometimes skewed.
Yeah.
So even for your children, and this I'm talking more to our kids that are 10 to our teens, have them look at their screen time. All electronics, whether it's Android phones, whether it's iPhones now, do track the screen time. So have them log it. And it's a good baseline to come in and be like, look, I'm a little concerned that you've been spending so much time on your electronics.
Yep.
As your mom, as your dad, as your caregiver, we want to make sure that, we're not feeding the brain with things that you don't need in there.
Yeah.
So help me help you. I need to know how much time you really are spending. Right now, mom thinks you're on there 12 hours a day. Well, prove me wrong.
Yeah.
See, that's a good way to approach it, where you're coming in not as the bad person, but hey, we need to work on this together. Let's work on this as tandem in partnership, and show me how much time, because your kids may be surprised. Just like with Manny talking about the data he collected, they may end up looking and going, oh my gosh, that's what helped Loki and I. Loki's like, Mom, don't ask. I've already spent 3 hours today on my electronics. And I'm like, oh, so I don't even need to tell you. See, he shaped his own. Don't ask, Mom. I'm already going to tell you. Here's my phone. Here's my iPad. I'm going to go out by the dock or by the tree. That's what he does now when he understands, because what we had to do was have him understand how much time he's spending.
Yeah.
So, all right, what happened after the data collection?
So the long story short of it is, so he went from about 3 hours at a time and like 3 straight hours. And so I showed him that. But the other thing is that my son in particular doesn't like to play outside. So I tracked that same data on the same time. And we did it for about a week. And he spent literally 30 minutes in 1 week outside. 30 minutes when he had much more opportunity. So he spent way more hours than he did in video games than he did outside. So he said, all right, we're going to set a new goal. So that was the second part. So with shaping, right, in our practice, we do data collection and we set goals. And they could be small goals. They could be big goals, depending on the kid. So for him, I said, we're going to cut it in half, right? So we're going to go from 3 hours to an hour and a half tops per week of video game time. And then you're going to go from 0 minutes to at least an hour outside per week. And he goes, okay. So we broke it down in terms of per day, like we'll let him play more on the weekends than on the weekdays, stuff like that. So we kind of put it all together, and he likes calendars. That's his thing. He likes to know what's happening tomorrow and what's happening this weekend. And he always asks, he's kind of an inquisitive kid like that. So that's why I said I'm blessed, because then once we mapped that all out, he actually implemented that. Present day, so that was a year ago. So present day, Monday through Friday, we're at 0 hours of video game time, Monday through Friday. He does not play any video games Monday through Friday. And that wasn't us.
That's what I was going to ask. Was that his choice?
Limited. We didn't ask. He's not asking. He's not volunteering to play. Like we've even, there are times where we're like, hey buddy, you can go play video games. And you go, no, I'm good. And what he'd rather do is either play with the twins or hang out with us watching TV after he does his homework. On the weekends, the same thing is happening now. So we'll play a little bit of video games here and there, but most of the time, and we're down to maybe an hour. And so, yeah, that's why I feel blessed. But I think a lot of it, so I could have done the proverbial like restrict access, denied access, take the video games away, those kind of things. But for my son, he doesn't show a lot of empathy when it comes, like he doesn't really if you take things away, like last night, no kidding, last night we sent him to bed early because we caught him in a little lie, not a little lie. He lied about something, and we're like, okay, we don't like liars, so you're going to bed early tonight. Okay, you don't really care about going. No, it's fine. I don't mind. I'm tired anyway. No, that didn't work, right? So you kind of test these things, but with him, he doesn't like. Okay, if I'm denied access to him, it's not a big deal. So denied access for him is not effective, but shaping and modeling and coaching and goal setting and stuff, that seems to work for him.
Very nice.
So yeah, that was cool.
How about you? You're just walking into that. But what about the kids at our school though, and in the clinic? I know that you have to deal with on the daily. And a lot of that is kids coming from an environment where there is no structure. There are no limits. And then we put them into our academic program or in our clinical program that we're like, nope, no access.
I would say in general, the kids are so much more capable than we give them credit for. Like a lot of them, they do it relatively easy. Actually, I know one of the kiddos we currently have, his mama told me, I think it was about a month ago, he all about electronics, Xbox, TV, movies, phone, anything he could get his hands on. Got in trouble one night, sent him to bed early. Smart little kiddo. He waited till parents went to sleep, got his dad's phone, put it up to dad's face while he was sleeping, and got onto it. It was on it for like 2 hours.
Nice.
So they're very smart. They will find a way. But it's just setting those boundaries is a big thing. 'Cause once they know a boundaries in place, what the expectation is, they're capable of following it.
Absolutely.
And then also model the behavior you want to see. If you don't want phones at the dinner table, as an adult, don't bring your phone to the dinner table.
Yes. Yes.
Just kind of stick to that. And I think a big point too that you had said earlier is that it's okay to be bored. That all people in society are struggling with that. Like if you look at the epidemic with like the opioid crisis with the like white collar middle American, a lot of that's due to just boredom, that people go to work, you come home, don't know what to do with yourself. Here's easy access, that instant gratification, and then you get caught in that trap. So that's kind of with the older population with kiddos is the electronics that can easily kind of go into that direction.
Absolutely.
Yes, you got to teach them young how to handle being bored. It's okay.
And it's generational. It's generational. I think that's a big point, especially in our high school. We see that a lot is that I'm bored. I'm bored. I don't know what to do. Okay, well, good. I'm glad that you're bored. I'd like you to think of 5 things that you could do that don't involve X, Y, and Z. I want to, as we're wrapping up this show, I want to give some hope to some of our parents out there. My son wasn't as blessed as these two. Not at all. He fought me and he fights me now on the electronic time. So I would like to end our session today with what we call the pool of hours. This is a great way to shape the electronic time, but also start to get buy-in for other chores around the house. So what we did was we said, you get XYZ amount of hours a week. I can take hours away for, just like what you were saying, if Junior can't tell the truth, well, hey, guess what? Hey, buddy, you just owe me an hour of your time. You will learn real quick how valuable and precious that electronic pool of hours are. How about, hey, I need the garage cleaned out. You can earn yourself another half hour of electronic time. This is something that doesn't cost you anything, gets buy-in from your child or your niece, your nephew. It doesn't matter. It's caregivers. Anyone that has to watch a child, this gives you an arm in. And allow them to dictate. Just like when your son, if he's choosing to use his time on the weekend and not during the week, then that's his choice. The biggest thing that Love and Logic teaches is that when you give options to your children, no matter what they are, make sure that you're happy with all of the options, but give them the choice because then you have their buy-in. So until next time, families, we'll see you back here on the Purple Couch Podcast. Hi, friends and families. I wanted to take a quick moment to let you know what's coming soon. We received a question from a parent, and it's probably going to take an entire episode just to address this question. My 4-year-old is running our house. She's nonverbal. She screams. She will not do anything I want to do. Can you help me? Yes, we can. So come on back to the Purple Couch podcast and we'll be sure to ask and answer your questions. See you soon.